success comes from your own mix of experiences, of the trial and error. So if you can think about all of the different elements, and it's the good, the bad, the evil, the great, and how that translates into your own little cocktail, and you can actually really own that, that is where the success comes from. The big brands have been using it for years and years and years, but things like colour and, you mentioned font and all of those things that we think, oh, come on, it doesn't actually matter, but actually it does. It does impact us in a way that we often make decisions within split seconds without realising it, because of perhaps a vibe somebody gave or a, I don't know, behavioural cue or something like that.
Or what marketing tactics do you think that most businesses actually miss or misunderstand?
Honestly, can say most businesses and business owners that I've worked with miss is actually just understanding.
What would be a big tip that you would give away for a business owner to take away from today? So Claire, thanks very much for coming on, working on it. I appreciate you coming down.
Yeah.
No, thank you. And so Claire, let's just dive straight in. What would you say you're bloody good at?
Oh, what a question. I'm not sure I can answer that on air. I am good at, when I speak professionally with my clients, often they come to me because they're a bit stuck with who they are, what their brand is about. They often have a personal brand and a product brand and a whole bunch of stuff that isn't joined up. And I would say my superpower is being able to see that from a different angle, from a different perspective, and almost creating like a Venn diagram of all of these different components and packaging them up into something that means that can work as a brand, a personal brand, a company brand, and then what are the strategies that then need to follow for that person and company and brand to be successful, visible, but strategically, not just noise visibility, but actual visibility. So it's on message, on brand, and that actually delivers results according to what the goal is of that expert or founder that I work with.
Because that's the thing with things nowadays, isn't it? Years ago, it used to be like, okay, do the emails, do the ads in the yellow pages and the business pages.
Oh, the old yellow page.
That's it, yeah, let it speak for itself. And that's as far as it goes. The phone would ring or not. And you would then deliver your service thereafter. But nowadays, it's so much more, isn't it, I feel? So it's good that you mentioned strategy behind that. Because it's not just an ad, social media platform, whatever it is. It's so much more behind that. It's a whole brand experience even as well, isn't it? A whole strategy to it, as you say.
100%. And in fact, an ad on its own is rarely going to work in the way that perhaps it did in the yellow pages time, where you would just say, this is what I do, and people call you up. The expectation now is to take your audience in whatever industry you're in through a journey of understanding and gaining value, and importantly, gaining trust, because there's potentially so much noise out there, especially since AI has kind of brought so much more volume to all of the platforms that we're all in, that it's even more important to think, well, this isn't any longer about advertising. This is about how I bring people in, how I build community, how I communicate with people, build trust, and actually what are the many, many touch points in that journey that somebody is going to have interactions with either the founder or the team or with AI to actually get to the point where they actually want to take things to the next step. And it sounds complicated. If it's done the right way, it actually works like a really well-oiled machine. But you're right, it's completely a different game to what it was like a couple of decades ago.
Yeah, and also trust. You touched on trust there, and I think that's what a lot of these multiple ways of marketing and branding builds, isn't it? Because people want that trust. It's the review thing, isn't it? Like you go to a restaurant and you check all the reviews first. You need that sort of like reliability or some sort of trust element that you're going to have a good time, or this service is going to come to a certain level, isn't it, really, and what you expect. So let's get back into that in a sec. But how did you go from Barclays into Brand Mixology?
Oh, you've done your research. So, wow, how long do we have for that journey? It's going to be a lot of editing needed here. Okay, so when I was back in the days at Barclays, my career started in in recruitment, essentially. That wasn't necessarily intentional, I should add. It's just one of those things you kind of fall into. I think everybody falls into recruitment at some point, right? Or travel agent, it's one or the other. Yeah. So for me, it was recruitment. And then that narrowed down to graduate recruitment. So that's what I was doing at Barclays, at my stint there. For me, that space was very, very corporate. It doesn't really align with me hugely. So after my stint there, I actually then went to do continue the graduate recruitment for a very large charity called Teach First, where I was for eight or 9 years, something like that. And that then kind of narrowed down from mass recruitment to actually going into more of the program design and delivery side of things. So I've kind of taken the journey of knowing what it's like to interview and recruit. So I've done thousands of interviews, which is a great way of understanding how humans behave and how that then translates to the workplace, etc., through to the training side of things, and had the privilege of working with some being Teach First with so many highly trained quality teachers that then when you start to develop programs and training and things like that, you've actually got the benefit of learning from people that really, really are top of their game. In terms of how that's taken us to where we are now, interestingly, and I think we have those moments in our lives where something happens that you think, if that hadn't happened, parallel universe, like where would I be now?
It's like sliding doors.
Like sliding doors.
That film.
I love that film. In fact, I'm going to put that on my to-do list again because I haven't watched that for a while. It's so good, but it's so true.
It is.
And so my, and it sounds like a tangent and it's not, my niece was diagnosed with diabetes.
Okay.
She was 6 years old, and at the time I had a horrific phobia of needles and blood, and so this brave little 6-year-old was doing her little finger pricks, as you would do, to test her sugars, and Auntie Claire was having to leave the room because everybody knew that Auntie Claire would either be sick or faint or basically cry like a baby. So none of those things were appropriate, and I thought I'm going to have to get that sorted. So I reached out to a very, very good friend of mine who kind of knows all of the great people that there are out there, and he recommended this amazing hypnotherapist that I had 2 lengthy sessions with, and to cut a long story short, transformational. To the point that next time I visited my sister, I actually grabbed the little clicky machine and did a test on my own finger, and she could not believe that I had actually done that. So
you remove that block.
Remove the block. And the block wouldn't just be if I actually cut myself or had a blood test or anything like that. It was sometimes even just thinking of these things could get me to faint or feel sick or feel dizzy or whatever. So that transformation for me made me realise the power of our mind. Because if just thinking of something could make me have such a powerful physical reaction in a negative way, and I was able to overturn that, what else is our mind capable of? So I then decided to train in hypnotherapy. Okay. So that took quite a few years because I took it all the way. I made it all in or all out. So I was like, I'm going all in,
yes.
And did all of the clinical hypnotherapy training, and that takes us to roughly, I was continued working and was helping, kind of seeing clients on the side. And then when my son was born in 2017, that's when I just thought, I don't really want to carry on doing this. There's, and this is probably a completely different episode, but there's just something about employment that doesn't really align for me. It doesn't really make sense for me.
What's about working for a corporate?
Yeah, well, just corporate or just being employed in general. And,
Right.
and this isn't an anti-employment thing because there's absolutely, everybody is different. But for my own habits, skill sets and ways of being, it doesn't feel like a template that works for me. So I think that for me was the moment where I thought, now's the time to tear the plaster off on this. And actually at the time, the plan was to really build myself up as a hypnotherapist. And then I took everything that I knew kind of about programs, obviously recruitment. There's so much marketing and sales involved in that. So this wasn't a million miles from what I was doing, but I really wanted to refine it with all of the online strategies, so that I could have a location neutral business, the branding, all of that side of things. And as I got more and more immersed into that and found myself working and interacting with especially more people in the coaching, personal development space, all of that, I ended up taking more of an advisory role. And so that ended up being me kind of helping people to build up their own brands and their own marketing whilst using all of the knowledge that I had acquired, that I continue daily to acquire around kind of human behaviour and the difference that can make in psychology, because that's so, not just in the marketing side of things, but in actually somebody putting themselves out there, that it's so interlinked with our beliefs of ourselves and our mindset, as I'm sure as a business owner you profess to yourself. So that takes us to sort of where we are today, where that's what I do. I work with brands, and I work with varied brands, but my favourite ones, and I guess my specialism, are those that really want to kind of elevate their personal brand and bring me on board to enable them to do that, whilst also having kind of a strategic marketing plan, so that it's not just noise, but it's actually strategic visibility and branding that kind of translates into sort of leads and how that all works throughout the business and the funnel.
See, so Claire, I mean, so I had a list of questions here, but there's so much more of that to unpack.
I told you it was a long story.
Wow, okay. So before we go on to the next one, the psychology, perhaps the buy-in psychology or the buy-in behaviours, is that what you tap into with the marketing?
I tap into quite a lot of that, and I've actually also trained.
So it's like Steve Jobs with his fonts that he done, wasn't it? He done that in university, fonts, and then he brought that into Apple.
Exactly. So I genuinely believe that if you start, and actually speaking with Steve Jobs, he very famously says that you only see the journey when you join the dots backwards. And I think that's so true. And sometimes you don't realise when you look back that all of the little experiences that you've had kind of weave their way into what you're doing now. So although I don't currently put any of my clients into hypnosis, what I've learned about the subconscious mind and our behaviours and sort of how humans interact, how that kind of lends itself to copy, to video, to sales, and to branding is absolutely fascinating. And actually that led me last year to do an additional qualification in something called neuromarketing, which is relatively less spoken about, but it's basically looking at how our brains work, and what we look for, and the big brands have been using it for years and years and years. But things like colour and, you mentioned font and all those things that we think, oh, come on, it doesn't actually matter. But actually it does. It does impact us in a way that we often make decisions within split seconds, without realising it, because of perhaps a vibe somebody gave or a, I don't know, behavioural cue or something like that.
Yeah.
And sometimes even imagery or photography in branding can actually draw somebody in or do the opposite in a really subtle way. So I find it fascinating.
It really is. And you mentioned about the colours there, like people associate colours with certain things as well. Like if you said like ozone friendly, like what colour would you think? Like green, So it's like I think trust and warmth. It's like blue and orange. Orange apparently is supposed to be like power.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know if that's just because of the sun elements of it. I don't know.
It could be to do with that. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what it is, but when we done our rebranding years ago, it was the blue was team and trust, and then the orange was power, and the green was kind of like sort of like taking it forward, and like greener, and so and greener as in more cleaner. In a sense, so that sort of like resonated with those colours and the message that we were trying to deliver at the time.
Definitely, and the green also in terms of rooms around you. Sometimes even the colouring that you have in your room, green is meant to kind of signify like prosperity and things like that. So if you have an office space, you might want to put some greens in or something like that. Blue, you often see financial services have blues because of that trust element. Red can often be that kind of like real driver. Yeah. So you might not want to paint your office red, but red within a brand will have a very different feel. And although, and I'll be honest, I think I probably back in the day used to think, oh, come on, people are spending like all of this money on like all this mumbo jumbo, as some people might say. But actually, when you start to learn more about like intrinsically as animals that we are, kind of the things that we, and if we relate ourselves to animals in nature and what they, will look out for as danger and safety, etc., you can see that there is actually something very deeply psychological beneath that. And although as humans we've evolved enormously, we actually kind of still have the same brains.
Yeah.
So-
Isn't that funny? How it kind of defaults back to that same way
Yeah.
it's been for probably hundreds of years.
Exactly, and that flight, fight or freeze, that doesn't go away. We might not be getting chased by some like big dinosaur or saber-toothed tiger. Now that fear might come from putting a video on social media, but it's the
Yeah.
exact same process that's happening. Which,
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. Those threads of my experience still kind of are part of what I do day to day.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Isn't it funny? It's so great. So what would you say then, brand mixology, what would you say
It actually represents then.
So it's the mixology part of it isn't just my fascination for cocktails, which I'll be honest, I do love a cocktail. But the mixology is, there's a lot of noise out there of people who feel they have the silver bullet or the template for success. And my experience personally, and from hundreds of entrepreneurs that I speak to, is that actually the success comes from your own mix. Your own mix of experiences, of the trial and error, and also of what makes you unique. So if you can think about all of the different elements, and it's the good, the bad, the evil, the great, and how that translates into your own little cocktail, and you can actually really own that, then I think that is where the success comes from. And I work with that with myself, with my clients, to really think about, okay, what is it that makes you unique, and what is it that you're going to put out there that means that you're not just adding to the noise. So that's where the mixology part comes from. It's mixing it all up, and then the slogan is to create a business and life that you actually want, and that's around kind of not following that template, maybe that same cocktail recipe that everybody else has, but actually creating your own, and not following the template of must do certain things in a linear way in your life and checking them off, and then reaching a certain age where you realize actually you've just lived miserably because all you did was check off the things that society tell you should, as opposed to actually really owning who you are and what you want that life to be. So ultimately, it's, if somebody has taken the brave, bold move to put themselves out there as a business owner, an expert, a creator, whatever it may be, and to take that stand aside from what is considered the kind of safer route, then it's about kind of really owning that journey.
It's funny you mentioned about that, taking a different route and society and the pressure from society, because like, I've got a couple of friends and they're not really gone down that same kind of element of timeline of which you should meet, that society puts upon you, like a certain age, and both of them are female, and they're kind of like, oh, well, I should really be having a partner right now, and I was like, well, I don't have to, and then I should be married by 26 and I should be having a baby by 28, and I was like, that's what society tells you, and one was like 27, I'm like, but you're you, like it's just kind of, you're having a great life. Like, this is your life. This is your version. There's many, many different versions. Why must you adhere to what society tells you, Like, in actual fact, more so recently, probably since lockdown, I would imagine, probably because there's more information available now, people are finding their own ways, aren't they? They are finding different journeys that perhaps wouldn't have even been allowed or certainly frowned upon before 2020, and I think that resonates with, or there's certainly an alignment with marketing, because I think that there's Daniel Priestley, isn't it? Jess's friend.
Yeah.
Jess's friends. Jess's good friend, Daniel Priestley. He says that the winners of 2026 will be the ones that excel at their personal brand, and that could be personally, you or I, or our business as a brand. Because whenever I've spoken about a couple of businesses that I have, I'm like, just look at them as a person. So we have like a brand book, because there's like, it's just, you dress it up like your tone of voice, message you want to get out, like a person. What's that person? And that kind of branding. I mean, I know you'll know far more than me, but with that being said, what do you think would be different in 2026 regards marketing to all previous years? What do you think would win, in your opinion?
What would win is it is that personal. And I love what you've said there about giving companies an identity, I guess, as well. It isn't a company. It's what personality does it have? What values does it have? How does it operate with its customers or clients in a way that is different and unique. And I think within a company or within a personal brand, which actually the two can sit together, and you're a great example of this. So you've got your great company, but you're also really great at putting your personal brand out there, hence the podcast and your socials and that. So you operate as a personal brand that is this company owner as well, which is a really brilliant model. And I think to answer your question, we're going to see, or what is going to work more and more is really thinking about the consumer and what the consumer wants to hear. And the consumers just don't want to keep hearing the same kind of AI dross, for want of a better word. And this is not anti-AI, because I use AI every day and I think it's fantastic. And I think anything that you could do within your business that can be accelerated with AI is great. However, that should not replace the human voice and the human interactions and the points at which you actually do need that human side of things. So what I see potentially changing is that people are now, it's like that wave of AI, and it's not going to stop, of course, it's going to continue and continue to accelerate and hopefully in really great ways. But I think I can churn out 100 pieces of content a day because AI is doing them for me, I think is going to start getting tired. And I think the things that are going to start to resonate more are the ones that are starting to feel more human, and where it just doesn't feel like somebody's just lazily just delegating everything away to AI, but actually still putting that human touch in and that personal touch. Rather than perhaps have the mentality of like quick wins all the time. I think everybody's always looking for quick wins. It's like, what's the fastest way of doing it? How can I accelerate it, as opposed to actually putting the work in and putting the hours in? And that is in relation to marketing and personal branding and actually relationship building. You don't, as they famously say, you don't ask somebody to marry you on day one.
Well.
So I mean, it's been known. Probably not the most effective strategy.
Best not to advise. I wouldn't advise it. Anyway.
I wouldn't advise it. So you wouldn't do it with your clients either. So it's I think it's moving away from trying to just speed everything up and make everything easy and fast tracked, and actually just maybe starting to weave in some old school values of relationship building and how that can translate itself and maximize itself. And that's where you can use amazing kind of automation and tech and AI to maximize the message, but not for it to originate the message.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that, because I'm members of this mastermind group, and there was in it you've got all these really good people, like lots of great successful people, and they done a poll, and there's about 11 great elements of being part of this mastermind group. And the two that came out on top, which was towards the end of last year, was the accountability meeting that you get every fortnight, and the bi-monthly human interaction, like the events that we meet up and we're kind of in the same room. And on that list is some of the sort of like one-to-one connections with some very, very rich and successful people. And you're like, and they didn't even come close to the top two. Do you know what I mean? So you think, and then when so I've started another company up, and it's to help service-based business owners and stuff and to get going. And it's like, we're trying to create a bit of a community. And then when we done our research into that, it was like people have almost been starved of the human element because the AI and just pure automation take over. So now people are looking for that monthly interaction, even if it's just like on a Zoom, like a community coming together. Yeah. And you touched on the relationship thing there. So if you think about some of the best relationships you've had, like say perhaps a best friend from school, or a husband or wife, whatever it is, you would have built that relationship up over the many years and the many times that you've probably done something great, and of course the bad times as well, and it all combines to make this great, deep, meaningful relationship. And I think that's coming to the fore with regards marketing, branding, providing a service or a product, and winning the consumers to come over to you, or deciding to come buy your product or service. And I think that's sort of massive, certainly more so now than ever, perhaps because AI, because people are wanting that authenticity, that personable brand that's relatable and so on. And when you do videos and you do write text, if there's the odd mistake in a video or odd stutter or here or there, it's almost like people connect with that even more than just a well-polished text, you know, or script sort of thing, you know. So is am I kind of doing your job for you?
No, I'm agreeing with everything you're saying. I'll just keep drinking my water.
But it's water. I wouldn't know anyone. So anyway, I was going to go on to say, would you agree with that? Because that's certainly what I've realised and felt. And certainly building up this other venture of mine, when we've done the research, it was the results were coming back to confirm that, and exactly what you were saying, you know, as regards to the way things are going forward.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. And just going back to what we were saying earlier, at the end of the day, we are humans, and we live in packs, we survive in packs. That's how, you know, we were trained to survive and built to survive, and I don't think that will ever go away. And yes, we've had the enormous like wave of AI, but not so long. We can all remember the lockdown days as well, and that's all happened in a relatively short space of time. And all of these things have been coming up to 6 years now, wasn't it? Almost 6 years ago. Yeah, coming up to it, it would have been like, you know, literally lockdown. And at first, everyone was like, "Yay!" But actually, the knock-on effects of that have been huge, but also I think have made people realise how what initially felt like perhaps a bit of a novelty. Has made it realise that we do need that human connection. And although we can do online meetings and all that, it isn't the same. And there are kind of studies of the brain around kind of how interacting in a 2-dimensional versus 3-dimensional way isn't the same, hence why Zoom meetings are more tiring. You know, when we've all had to sit through loads of Zoom meetings, it's not the same as in person. It feels really exhausting. And then AI and kind of like this, I don't know, this acceleration of something that doesn't really feel human. I'm hoping just it is making people realise how important that connection is. And you mentioned community as well, which, again, is just something that we all thrive on and naturally need, you know, from a survival perspective. But then, you know, if we put it into business, and it doesn't surprise me in your mastermind that people selected that, because, yeah, it's great to hear from the really top people that you could potentially see on TV or read a book about and all that. But actually sometimes what you want are those conversations where you're speaking to somebody that's kind of like a peer, that you can just say, "Oh God, I had a really shitty day." Sorry, I'm allowed to say that on your. You know, somebody you can just have those general interactions with, like that back in the day. You know, after a day in the office, you know, you'd all meet down the pub, and those kind of real human conversations. And even though it's done as part of a community, and you'll have that link between them, that commonality. It doesn't surprise me that comes up as one of the top things, and kind of linked to accountability as well, because that's that kind of human interaction of, okay, let me make sure I did that thing before the meeting. Keeps you on track.
That's right. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned about the accountability part, because even like when you speak to other people, they're like, "How do you stay disciplined?" And then, but when you self-reflect, and I'm like, "Well, I'm not." And you know, because I think you're your worst critic, aren't you? In a sense, you're like you put yourself under a lot of pressure to kind of constantly strive, or I do anyway. I'm sure many people with businesses, I think, do in general, because everyone I speak to with business is exactly the same. But it's funny because you do like to hold yourself accountable, but it's great having that external side, that, like you said, a community, or even just sort of like a relationship with another person that's kind of traveling down the same road as you, or just with you by your side, going through the same highs and lows, you know, which is brilliant. So I think, again, it comes back to the community part, human interaction and so on, you know.
Yeah.
So it's
and I think accountability, I think sometimes can have a bit of a bad rep, because the word accountability can kind of make us like conjure up like your teacher at school, you know, looking over you going, "You didn't do your homework," and especially for entrepreneurial people, the last thing we want is somebody telling us what to do. Right. So accountability can bring that up. So I kind of like to reframe the accountability as not necessarily somebody that's going to tell you off, but actually a big part of what I think can lack that you don't have when you don't have a boss or something like that, or your mum, is actually somebody saying, "Well done for getting that done. You did a really good job." Like, no one says that. You don't get that. Yeah. And sometimes if you haven't got that validation other than what's coming in your head, and let's be honest, we often tend to kind of err on, like you said, the critical side. If you have a space where you can catch up with somebody weekly or every couple of weeks and just be like, "This stuff got done," and they can just even give you a thumbs up or a pat on the back, it can just kind of help kind of move you and tick you along. Otherwise it can feel like a really lonely space, especially in the kind of earlier years. I guess with you, Brad, because you've got a big team now, in a sense that team's holding you to account because you can't not show up.
That's it. Yeah.
You know, the boss can't not show up. So once you've got that, it becomes an accountability kind of like in a reverse way.
Yeah, it's like holding yourself accountable, but then when you do have a team that relies on you, and like if ever I look at my to-do list and I've got sort of like say 10 items, whatever, I look at what I'm being held accountable for completing, to then I don't want to be the bottleneck. I want to make sure that I deliver and I lead from example in that sense.
Yeah, because if you're not doing your stuff, you can't expect others to.
Why haven't you done yours? Well, you didn't do it. Oh,
yeah.
Okay, good point. Okay, I'll go back to my water. So it's kind of like that sort of thing, but just on another version of accountability, it's not to sort of like put pressure on you in a sense. I've done a couple of challenges online. Not online. I can show my age online. Dial up. On social media, and it was a daily challenge just before Christmas, and then currently in January. And then I've been getting messages for each one from different people. Not many. I'm talking about 2-3 people each one, and they're doing it with me. They're like, oh, because you're doing it, are you doing it today? And I'm like, yeah, I will do. Hold on, I'm going to do it. But then I then post it, and okay, I've done mine. But they don't want to put it on social media, but they sometimes send me pictures of them doing it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've done the ice bath one, I'm doing the press up one, so it's kind of like that sort of thing. Yeah. So it's kind of like that, but it's really funny because now I'm like the other night, I done it about 10:30. I was ready for bed. I was like, oh no, I've got to do them bloody press-ups. I was like, okay, right, I better do that quick. So
you're like the office influencer now.
So I've quickly done it, put it on. I was like, right, okay, great, done. But I was like, well, I can't miss a day because I know that at least 2 people are kind of watching me, you know, and it's that sort of like internal accountability. I think
it makes a difference because there's people relying on you, and in your case, if it's your team members as well, there's the leadership side of things. So 100%, I think if accountability is looked at in the right way, that it isn't head teacher kind of ticking you off and like wagging the finger. I didn't actually. I had a headmaster, so I don't even know where that's. Maybe it's a previous life thing. I don't know. But we have the connotation of this person in authority. That I don't know. Maybe I need to go and explore that further. But it's not about somebody telling you what to do, which can sound like that from accountability, but it's actually just it's quite the opposite. It's sharing that journey, and actually sometimes if it's a case of no, I didn't do that, if it can be somebody that can be like, well, how come? That can be really helpful to then reflect on. Okay, well, is it that logistically, like a whole bunch of stuff happened? Is it that you didn't do it, but you quite consciously parked it because there's something that took priority? Yeah. Is it that the old gremlins between the ears took over, because often that's the case, and you keep procrastinating, put something off because actually there's a reason why you're pushing that one down the road all the time. And actually if you've got the space to discuss why something didn't get done, it isn't then a telling off, it's does it need to be parked or addressed?
I had a business coach. I had 3 business coaches in total, and the more recent one was really good with me, because what he'd done was whenever I used to not deliver something that I had said that I would deliver for the whole accountability thing, he would ask me like the why, like why not, and then but what would be the outcome had you done it? And it's almost like you then start to value the reason as to why you're doing it. So if it's something that you see no value in it, you're less likely to do it. And then perhaps you're then saying, why you're kind of kicking back a little bit, aren't you? Of like saying, well, I don't, why am I doing this? Why do I have to do this? But if you understand why you're doing it, and it's something that's actually going to benefit you or your vision or your journey or goal, whatever it is, then sometimes you do need that person to say, well, come on, like that press-ups thing. The press-ups, we all know it's good for you. So I'm sitting there thinking, well, actually, press-ups wouldn't be too bad. I could probably carry on of those. So therefore, it's something that's not, I don't see any value in it. I see the value in it. So now I'm like, okay, I wish you did do those. And then that accountability now is a positive support network in a sense, rather than a negative, because I can't see the value of it. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
And that's such great leadership, because that's beyond management. That's great leadership, because if regardless of where somebody is in an organization, if they can't see their role in the bigger vision, then it's really hard to buy someone in. And I think that leadership and kind of going back to the days of Teach First, actually something they were excellent at doing was having those 5-year vision plans, sharing them and making sure that every single person in kind of offsites was bought in. And then that trickled down to different departments, different teams, different sub-teams. Then every single objective that somebody had tied into the 5-year vision. So you could see, even if you had the most junior role in the entire organisation, you could see what you were doing every day, how that was contributing to something bigger and how it was being measured as well. So I think it's such a valuable point to say to somebody if they haven't done it, it's like, well, really trying to explore why, and was it that it was devalued? And sometimes it can just be time management, but sometimes it can just weed out people that perhaps don't have the same values for the vision of the organisation. So, yeah.
And it's right. It could be time management or something that perhaps you're not too well rehearsed in, or you don't understand the skill of it, or something like that. And if you had somebody that understands the reason as to why, they could probably suggest a book or a course or something. So you're constantly developing. So in this particular instance, but at the beginning of my relationship with this last business coach, he suggested David Allen getting things done, because I used to literally just pile everything on. And I'd work from like morning till night. And I'd be just racing through stuff. I'd be like, as Jim Rose is like figure of 8, so I wouldn't actually be moving the needle. And he was like, right, brother, I know what you need to do. Just read this book. I was like, okay, cool. And then all of a sudden it taught me to sort of segment things and put things into sort of blocks and so on. And all this in, because obviously your brain, as you probably well know, is muscles that warms up to that certain thing. If you're doing like multiple things, you're not really warming up to that one category, are you? You know, and if you're trying to think of something about moving the needle forward or the vision of the business, if you then got to jump on a call, jump on some emails and do this, you're not really going to give that the value that it needs in that thinking time.
Yeah, it's not efficient, and I forget what the number of seconds is now, and who knows how on earth scientists even come up with this, but there's a number of seconds that it takes your brain, and it's a lot between when you switch tasks to refocus itself with a new one. So if you are working on like multitasking, which is made to sound like, oh great, brilliant multitasker, it's actually not that efficient. So it's much better to kind of batch similar types of tasks that can kind of get you in the zone, which I know is easier than done, than to kind of like weave all over the place.
There was one good lesson on that actually that I think I read it somewhere, and it was you count to 26, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Okay.
and you time how long it's going to take you to do that, and then you count or you list the alphabet A to Z, and you list how long that's going to take you. So you're focused on just that one thing. And then I've done it with my team, my office team, because I showed them the power of sort of like concentrating on one subject at a time, or not, as the case was. And I was like, right, now combine them. Now, what do you mean? I said, okay, 1A, 2B, 3C, 4. And then when it got to H, they were like, and it went up to minutes. And I'm like, you haven't even finished, and already it's taken you 4 times more to do that.
That actually hurts my brain even thinking about it.
That's what it happened. That's what happens when you jump from task to task. You're not warmed up, and you flow so much more seamlessly if you just focus on one thing at a time.
I love that. Love that. I'm going to use it with my son.
That's it. It's like seconds. It's like 1 to 26 and then A to Z. And then you combine them and it's like minutes. And you're like, there you are.
Oh,
See?
that's my takeaway.
That's the one thing. So what... let's get back to marketing. So what would you say the marketing, or what marketing tactics do you think that most businesses actually miss or misunderstand?
Oh, it's a great question. I think it's less about the different tactics. I think what most, and I honestly can say most businesses and business owners that I've worked with miss is actually just understanding where they're trying to get to, and what the strategy is, and then putting the right tactics into place one by one and making them work. What I see a lot is, it's almost going back to the template life we were talking about. It's like, well, everybody else is on like 3 or 4 channels on social media, so we need to do that, and we need to have email marketing, and we need to have this, and so all of these different components are happening, but none of them are speaking to each other. And then And then after a lot of money has been spent doing these things, then everything gets thrown out the water. Oh, marketing doesn't work. And I think the reason it hasn't worked is because it's been kind of just, it's been like throwing spaghetti at the wall, it doesn't stick. Depends how much you cook it, but it probably doesn't stick. But so I would say it's less about what they're actually doing, but actually how intentional and strategic they're being about what they're doing, and really ensuring that it ties in with the message, and very importantly that it ties in with the consumer or customer that they're trying to reach, and more often than not, it's the content across the board is very much kind of company centric or founder centric, and unless what they're saying, their story, whatever else, is very much somebody seeing themselves in that story, then basically all you're doing is putting out noise about yourself and your company, and the reality is no one cares. So it's not like old school advertising we were talking about before, where all you do is put out how brilliant your product is. It's thinking, what does my ideal audience or client or consumer want to hear? What is their problem? And then when you think you know the problem, go even deeper. And this is where the psychology comes into it. And it's like, no, what does this mean to them as a consumer? And this is B2B as well. People think B2B is different, but at the end of the day, we're all selling to humans.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter if you're selling to the CEO of the biggest company in the entire globe, they're still a human, pretty much. Actually, I'm thinking of one that I would debatable with the one that I have in mind, but that aside, the majority of them have some human element to them, and so they are still going to have the same purchasing needs, and if you really go into the psychology of that, it's about what our human needs are, just translated into business. So if you can really understand on a really deep level, which I know people say, I've done my customer profiling, but very few people have done it to the depth of really understanding what does this post actually mean for your client, and how is that showing up in your messaging, how is it showing up in your content, versus how much of it is just about you. And there's quite an interesting trick, actually, and you can even just do this with AI now really easily, so you don't have to kind of word count, but if you go on your website, and you so you can now get AI to do it by just either copying it or depending on how much you can search your website, and you ask it to count how many times you use the word I or we or our, and then how many times you're using the word you or yours, and then it should be about 80% talking about you or yours or theirs, or so basically the language that tells you how much of the language is about you versus the client. And it's especially straight after it, but it's really good because it gives you a really good way of being like, okay, this is where we need to shift, and we need to shift with thinking about what the problem is that I'm trying to solve, as opposed to there's so many company websites that you open, the first thing you see is we are this and this and this and this, and you can have that as long as that person that you want to reach can see themselves in that statement. But if it's about you, then you're already kind of like losing at the starting point. So anyway, that's a trick that used to be a bit more time consuming, but now with AI you literally just copy and paste it all across, or just put the link in per page. And AI can give you that percentage, and it's a really helpful telltale.
Yeah. The ICP, for us marketing, no, I'm not marketing, but the ideal client profile, I only really understood the value of that in the last few months of last year. And there was a couple of guys that I am following on social media, one on LinkedIn, one on Instagram. And I didn't really resonate with them, but I appreciated and respected the content that they were and the messaging that they were sending out from a business point of view. And it was only when I started really watching a lot of their stuff, I'm like, they understand with complete clarity their ICP. Mm-hmm. And both of them have literally just shot through to success really quickly. Because what they've done is they've listed exactly who their product is for, but they've also listed with the equal amount of clarity who it isn't for. And it's like you have done your research onto who exactly you want this message to come across to. And one of them's got an academy, and another one's a scaffolding company, and they are just not my type of personality, but I wouldn't buy necessarily scaffolding. I wouldn't buy neither of their services, but they are just rocketing. Certainly last year, and they hadn't been on social media for long. One of them a bit longer, and then what one of them done recently is start to do behind the scenes videos. So now it's even more personal. That one of them was in a meeting. I'll get the camera, or the camera guy was in the meeting, and they were going through some financial struggles, but they literally revealed the whole thing. And then the next week they showed like the whole. I'm not suggesting everyone needs to show their laundry, but it's for this particular guy, it really worked because he's very, very confident. You know, perhaps some might say overconfident, whatever you want to call it. But he certainly comes across very confident, perhaps even cocky, if you want, in a sense. But he also showed the low points as well, and I think because of that, he then really resonated with so much more people because they're like, well, I have those exact same problems. And rather than dress himself up to be this perfect person that has a great business, he also shows the downsides to it as well when men don't turn up, you know, the problems that can go wrong on site and so on, that whole thing. But he literally just talks about his ideal client profile all of the time. And because of that, he makes it clear who he's not trying to reach. So you could say to him, "Oh, you're too confident." Well, yeah, but you're not my client profile.
Yeah, if you find that annoying or frustrating, then you're not for me.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, exactly. But he's doing very, very well. And the other guy with the academy, he's just shot for. He's got another level that he launched this month as well. And it was like a long waiting list. He showed like lifetime waiting list, like a live video of the waiting list, like just pop. I mean, like as soon as he pressed launch, it was like bam, bam, bam. I was like, all that because he built it all up.
Yeah.
You know, like and it just made it very clear. This is for, but it's not for. You know, this is my service. And it was just the power of it is amazing.
Totally. And it's about, again, it goes back to that connection, and people will connect to you if they can see themselves in that story. So that vulnerability that you mentioned with somebody who's able to kind of articulate what they're great at, but actually have those low moments, then that you're this human element, it's the full package. It's like that's where the mixology comes from. It's actually those elements that you might think you want to sweep under the carpet are what people want. So there's that. The other thing with ideal profiles is and niching, I guess, what a lot of people I suppose also refer to it as, is that often that's kind of seen as niching in terms of kind of the industry, which absolutely is sometimes. But I think sometimes it doesn't need to be about niching the industry, but understanding the person that you want to work with, the stage that they're at, and the service that you offer. So that's really more about, and it's very much what you're saying, it's understanding that client profile, where they want to be, what their pain points are, how you can help them, what that help actually deep down means to them. And they may be in different industries, but then you are niching because you're not saying I'll work with everyone. You are still tapping into a layer of people, even if it is cross industry. And I think there is a time and a space where actually working cross industry can actually be really powerful, and bringing different ideas and concepts in and borrowing them from different industries can actually get quite a creative juices flowing. But I think the just understanding that the client is right, and I'm doing this for anybody who's obviously not on. They're not going to know. I'm basically just like almost as I'm moving my hands along to try and kind of illustrate that it's that I suppose in a linear way you'd be looking at the different industries, but across the industry, there's people at a certain stage, and so if anybody is thinking I just can't really pick a niche, often it's because they're trying to pick an industry, and actually you can refine it across industry, but still refine it down to the individual within that industry that you would work with.
It's so powerful, isn't it?
But it's so powerful because then you are, and you're absolutely right. You kind of want to repel some people because that means that you are attracting the right ones and repelling the wrong ones.
Definitely, yeah, that's it. And just to quickly add, I've got one question, but just to quickly add on the branding and how long, like you mentioned about people doing marketing, and after a while, like you say, the spaghetti doesn't stick to the wall. They think, oh no, it doesn't really work. So I started LinkedIn being fairly active just over a little over a year ago, like towards the end of 2024. And it wasn't until perhaps May or June that I got some interaction. And then it was about, I think it was about July time, summertime, that I started to get some leads come from it. And then, but what I did really notice is the leads that were coming in was as if I'd cherry picked them myself. So it was just crazy. So it was like 6-7 months. So if I was perhaps paying someone to do that, I probably would have given up. I'm 6 months. Oh, I'm costing it. I mean, what's going on? But then understand the personal branding or the branding takes so long to really resonate with people. And also there were so many people that have contacted me. And when I look back, they're not even connected with me. They haven't even interacted with some of my posts, or all of my posts, or liked anything at all. But they go, oh, I saw your post a month ago. But
Did you?
Yeah, I look back, you didn't do anything with it. You know what I mean? You just looked at it.
People, there are so many lurkers
Yeah.
that will be interacting with the content and you won't be aware of it. So what you said is music to my ears, because absolutely it speaks to consistency, a clear message, and actually just pinching your nose and doing it anyway, because you're not immediately going to get tons of likes and vanity metrics. You've got to keep going, and it's a long game. And that's why not everybody gets to the end, because many people just will do something 2 or 3 times and it's not working. And back to what you were saying before, it's something else that I see is just jumping in on something, trying it for a bit, it's not working, let's stop, or not measuring it. What does working actually mean? And actually sometimes the measurement is just taking the action. So with your example, your measure wasn't going to be initially how many leads and sales am I going to get from LinkedIn. I have clients that say, we've tried LinkedIn, didn't get any sales. How long did you try it for? And to begin with, you're not going to get any sales, but let's measure it on the consistency of 3 or 5 posts or whatever it is decided. And slowly you do start to see it build and build and build. But the vast majority of people don't follow through long enough. Yeah.
So the Vivid framework.
Yeah.
Run us through that quick.
So that's something that I've developed that really is about, and it kind of speaks to what we were saying before about kind of looking at the entire journey of somebody through the lens of an operational system, so that marketing actually isn't reactive, but it's really intentional. So without going through it kind of in huge amounts of detail, it's really thinking about kind of like the vision of the founder. Everything needs to be underpinned with that. I've had experiences where what a founder is trying to build doesn't actually resonate with what their vision is. And I don't just mean for the business, but for their life, because it means that they are going to have to be entirely immersed in the business. But when you hear what their vision is that they want to take more time out of the business. So then you need to be thinking of a different model. So the vision needs to be there. The identity is what we've talked about. So what is the message? Like what is your client's? Everything to do with identity of the business and the business owner. Then that point you could then translate to visibility that's actually going to work, as opposed to let's just, a lot of people immediately outsource social media management. Great thing to outsource, but if you haven't really got your clear message and vision, then you're just outsourcing somebody just to post stuff on your behalf, right? Yeah, exactly. So that needs to be really clear, and then that's all the way through to data, which is obviously innovation. I missed. So innovation is about it can be technology. Obviously AI, automation, all of that, and how it can work in your business. But innovation is also where you need to change things up. So what does your team look like? How can it operate better? And then finally data. So how are you actually tracking? What are the key things that you need to look at, and how are you measuring them? So that's something that I coined from all of the case studies and the work I've done with my clients. That's the kind of commonality that I've walked through them in that path to really make sure that there's something that's built that's tangible, and that's sustainable as well. So there's something that is just kind of like working in the background, but you've got to put the work in first, as we've said before.
That's it. Yeah, the data, you mentioned about the data, and it's really good that you've got that involved in that whole sort of like journey, because many people kind of just leave that part out, or perhaps it just falls off the edge of a cliff, or they might check it once in a while. But it's so important, I find, because like if, let's say, if you was running a marathon, like in your 2 months in your 4 month program, like you look back at your whatever app you use, and you say, okay, right, am I seeing any improvement? Am I increasing my miles, my speed, whatever it is? But you've got that data to then say, well, actually, how's the journey going? Well, it's going good, or it's not so good, or whatever. And that's exactly in business, isn't it? You can make the next decision based on how it's been, the journey so far, and you need that data. So
totally, and all data is good data. I think sometimes people don't want to look at it because the data can be like can tell you stuff you don't want to hear, but actually that's the good stuff to hear. Yeah. It's like, okay, so that particular campaign or post or whatever it is like completely plummeted. Great, that tells us something. So it's all of the data is important. I think for people that aren't already tracking things, and unless you're a really huge established business that has like enormous like funnels and things coming from all over the place, it's just keeping it as simple as possible. And that might just be like, what are my 3 key metrics? And one of them might be, like I said before, it might be an activity one. It might be, okay, is something, for example, if you want to grow your social media, am I posting? So my metric is I'm posting 3 times a week, for example. That's the metric. Did that happen? And then carrying on from there. But yeah, going in blind and doing all of the stuff and not actually reviewing it and then doing more of what works and what doesn't, how can you possibly know how to move forward and take it from there? So yeah, really important to even just come up with like 2 or 3 key metrics to begin with, and then you can obviously expand them from there.
So one of my things is going to be, what would be a big tip that you would give away for a business owner to take away from today? Would it be the metrics or from marketing? So if you said, okay, I would like to improve my marketing.
God, it's such tomorrow. Yeah, I mean, it's a really big question. It's a really big question, and obviously the obvious answer is it completely depends on what you mean by improve my marketing. Where are you now? Where are you trying to go? So I think the biggest, it doesn't sound like a really big tip, but the biggest thing would be get really clear on, and you don't have to go like years into the future, but by December, what does good look like? And then bring it back from there, because it's so easy to think, I need this social media, I need this tactic, that tactic, but actually do you? So start with the actual goal, and then think, how does that translate back? Then look at any marketing activity you are doing, and how does that help you reach what you want to reach? Do you need to be doing it? And again, it depends on the size of the business, but where can other people be supporting and helping, and where is it actually still right for the founder or business owner to be kind of involved?
That's quite a broad way of looking at it, in a sense that, like, if you said, okay, where would you be in by December, say, that even that question there could be powerful in the sense that, okay, well, I would like, 10 million, let's say. And then you think, well, you're only doing £500,000. Well, you only have 10 million in 11 months. So it's almost like, come back, begin with the end in mind. If, okay, all right, perhaps that isn't. And you think, well, how far have we gone so far? What are we at the moment? Well, we haven't even got any dashboards to review where we're at. Okay, well, let's get that in then. So you can kind of sort of like break it down, can't you, and put it under the microscope. And then you then start the journey of discovering exactly, laying out your path where you want it to be in so many months or years' time.
And I think it's so important for that goal not just to be a revenue goal, because everybody always goes for a revenue goal. And I think the goal should be, it's the go-to. And of course, it's a business. So of course you should have a revenue goal. Otherwise, you've got yourself a really expensive hobby. But it should also incorporate your own personal goals. Like, do you want to be full-time in the business? Is your goal by the end of the year to have more time off? Is it to open another business? So it really depends on what somebody wants personally, but I really encourage people to think about what they personally want. Like, why did you start that business in the first place? And most people will say time and financial freedom. It's like, well, have you got that? Or have you just become a kind of caged in your own business that's is it working for you? Are you working for it? So yeah, goal setting, of course, have financials if you must, but make sure you put your personal goals in, and then look at everything that's happening that you would consider marketing and think, is that going to be what's going to get me there? And I know that's high level, but you'd be surprised how many people don't.
It could be an in-depth question. Answer that, though, to be fair. So we could go on for hours, perhaps even days.
But if you want a more fun tip, it'll probably be the one I said earlier about the website, because that's one.
That's a good one.
That's an implementable one. That maybe takes a bit less inner work.
Yeah, that's it. Very helpful. So right, Claire, where can people find you?
They can find me online under Clare Marshall. So all of my social media handles are I am Clare Marshall. And my website is brandmixology.co, and my podcast is within there as well, where I speak to wonderful people about everything related to mixing things up and building brands. So yeah, that would be the place to find me.
So it's brandmixology.co.
.co.
Okay,
Correct.
brilliant. Well, Claire, thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been so much fun. I feel like
been
we're going for hours, but
amazing.
we're getting nodded at.
Yes, we are. So no, well, thank you very much anyway. I really appreciate it. It's been brilliant.
Thanks,
Thank
Brad.
you.
Speak to you soon.